We are joined today by Senator Gene Yaw. You are proposing legislation to regulate and tax skill games in Pennsylvania. What are skill games?
That's a very good question. What are skill games? Because people have a tendency to lump everything together because it's easy, and I've said this repeatedly, to define really what skill games are takes a little bit of thought and it takes some effort, and unfortunately people are not willing to do that. Skill games are the ones that there are, I think the number is, there are 11 court decisions in Pennsylvania addressing what skill games are. And so far, the only ones that have been through the court process are ones by Pacematic. Now, that's just one developer. But for some reason, the Commonwealth has targeted Pacematic type games. And what the courts have said that the games, skill games, there's three things in considering whether a game is skill or it's chance. Number one is their consideration to be paid, and yes, you put money in it. The second is what is the primary purpose of it, or the primary factor in it? Is it chance or is it skill? And then the following one is there a reward? And what the courts have said is that the Pacematic games, those of like it, the primary factor is skill. And the reason it's skill is this: it's the machine, it's not the person. Slot machines and other, that's the comparison all the time to skill games. They're slot machines. Slot machines are pre-programmed. There's an electric, whatever the program is, you push a button or you pull a handle or whatever, and something happens in it, and if it comes to that place on the program, you may or may, it stops based on the program. Skill games, on the other hand, and the reason the courts have said that there's skill involved, is that the player can affect the outcome. So what happens is, yes, there's mental acuity involved, and there's attention and maybe some intelligence and eye-hand coordination. But that's the reason I think that they're so popular also, is that there's a challenge to them. The people know, okay, I can affect the outcome. Even the Commonwealth's witnesses in some of the cases that have been out there have said, yes, these particular games, the player can affect the outcome, and that's the difference.
What would skill game regulation and taxes look like under your bill?
Well, under my bill, we have tried to cover every iteration of it. First of all, you have to understand, skill games were specifically developed to be supplemental income for small businesses. And that's probably also one reason why they're popular, because in order to play a skill game, you can't play them. We all have cell phones. You can play every casino game. You can buy lottery tickets and everything 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year on your cell phone. I could sit here while we're talking and I can play casino games. It's going to be more interesting than that, but I could do that. Skill games, on the other hand, they don't advertise. They have to be played in person on the premises. So if you have a tavern and that you have skill games, you have to have a customer in the facility to play. And that's a huge difference. The other big difference in it, just while I'm talking about that, is that skill games can't be played 24 hours a day. They're only played wherever they're located, if that business is open. So what we have done, we've tried to say in a setting like a tavern or something like that, you can have no more than 5 of these machines. The one thing that Pacematic and the skill, what we want to avoid with my legislation, is I don't want these fake mini casinos out there. We're against those. I don't want these storefront things. And remember, I said skill games are supplemental income to a going business, which can't be related to gambling. So it could be a convenience store, it could be a social club. Social clubs, we have no more than 10 machines. Now, even with that number, there's still a space restriction. I think it's 250,000 square feet per machine that they have to meet. So what we have tried to do is say, okay, we're going to help you supplement your income. You have to have some other unrelated business, something unrelated to gambling. We're going to restrict the number of machines, and that's what we've done. We've also built into our bill, I've heard complaints about, well, kids are going to play them. And I thought, okay, how many kids have cell phones? There are millions of cell phones out there, and and do we monitor all them? It's obviously the answer is no, we don't. But we've put in the bill, we're putting a provision in it that says, okay, you have to have some kind of an ID. There's got to be some ID check in order to play. And there's a couple of ways we could do that. One is to have a photo ID, like insert your driver's license. That would be one way. The other way would be just as you do when you buy alcohol at a convenience store, you have to take you go show your driver's license to the clerk at the counter, and then you can buy it. Well, we thought about we could do something like that and say, okay, the clerk, you have to prove your ID, and then the clerk can turn on the machine. And those are things that we've done. Like I said, we have tried to restrict it. We fully support the idea of getting rid of these mini casinos that are out there because, quite honestly, they advertise, they're stealing the name Skill Games. We think that it's very misleading to people because they think that, okay, I can play this game and I'm an interactive and I can have I can affect the result. And really, they can't. And that's kind of that's really cheating, and we want to eliminate that. One of the biggest beneficiaries of skill games, probably my guess is the biggest beneficiary of them, are veterans organizations. VFW, American Legion, anything like that. I've talked to numerous veterans organizations that have indicated to me that without skill games, they could not survive. And that's it's kind of a sad situation that I don't want them to be somehow, some of the regulations that are being proposed would actually eliminate them from skill games, and I don't want to see veterans turned into criminals, and that's just the wrong way to go when they depend so heavily on the revenues supplied or that are generated from skill games.
The governor proposed a 52% tax on skill games. Do you think this is an appropriate amount?
A 52% tax on skill games kills skill games totally. That's the elimination of skill games. That's what the casinos want. Let me explain this. We have done a lot of research, and there's been some done by some economists. Our proposal is to tax skill games at the same rate as table games. And the reason is this. Skill games there's a whole network of jobs that are associated with skill games, from the operator to the business owner to the property owner, and there's a whole series of people that rely on that economic stream. If you tax it, the economics are gone. There will be no games. The games will just simply not be out there. So what we have done, as I said, the studies that have been done with the 16%, it's almost like a seesaw or a teeter-totter, that that's kind of the point of equilibrium where it will generate in our numbers somewhere in the vicinity of $300 million a year in revenue. If you raise the tax, the revenue is going to go down. I mean, in history, we've had that at the national level. I mean, Ronald Reagan, when he was president, he did that. He lowered taxes and revenues went up. So that's kind of the approach that we used, and that is a point where we think that generating $300 million a year in taxes for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is a pretty good, that's really pretty good. At 52%, the skill games industry is dead.
Under your bill, where would the revenue from skill games go?
The initial time that we did skill games, the first time we introduced it, we had it going into the general fund. But the new bill, or the bill that we're going to introduce, has it going into, the revenue would go into the Clean Streams Fund. A large part of it would go into the ACAP program, which is the Ag Conservation Assistance Program, which benefits the farmers in Pennsylvania, and the indirect beneficiary is the Chesapeake Bay, which Pennsylvania is part of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, and we're under the gun with EPA to meet certain water quality requirements. So it's an easy way for us to help farmers and the environment by taking that money and dedicating it to a single purpose. Rather than put it in the, I know people kid about it, you put it in the general fund, it's the black hole. Where does it go? So we thought, okay, let's dedicate, this is special business. These are people that are asking to be taxed and regulated. Let's take that money and really put it in something that will, where we can really show what the income and how it's being used and the benefits of it.
The organization Pennsylvanians Against Gaming Expansion believes that regulating skill games in Pennsylvania would hurt the state's casino industry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I find that really hard to believe. First of all, that organization is a front for the casino. So it you know, what they say is the casino. The casinos are saying, okay, it's going to hurt us. The first case against skill games was in 2014. So skill games have been around for the last 11 years. And in that time, the revenues for the casinos have gone up every year. Last year it was a record. The year before it was a record. They're now making revenues in the vicinity of $6 billion a year. So yeah, if they're saying it's hurting them, I'm not sure, you know, the numbers don't fit.
Other legislators have proposed the idea of using the skill game revenue to go towards public transit or infrastructure improvements. What are your thoughts on that revenue plan?
I mean, it's opposite to what I'm thinking about, but also the plans that want to use that money, the taxes are so high on it that the skill games won't even be in existence. So the net result is going to be zero.
What inspired you to get involved with skill games?
Well, once again, a good question. I got involved because Mealy Manufacturing is the company that assembles skill games. They use the Pacematic, you know, electronics and everything, but they're made in my district. And I first toured their facility probably, it was before pandemic, so it was somewhere between 6-8 years ago or something like that. And they showed me what it was, and they had a very small operation at the time, which is now expanded out. They employed like 250 people, and that was how I got involved, obviously, as a constituent.
How do other states handle the skill games?
Some of them, the ones that I am aware of, our bill is very, very similar to what other states have done, and So, I mean, that's kind of how we put it together. We've tried to, like I said, we've tried to address every question that's out there, including law enforcement. Even part of the money that we have, there's a certain part of it set aside for law enforcement. So, we want to prevent or stop these storefront places. That's why we said it has to be associated with a going business. We don't want these storefronts. We want it to be a small business, neighborhood type atmosphere, which we think, have you ever been anywhere where there's skill games? I mean, so it's kind of a friendly, it's the camaraderie, which is different from casinos. Look, casinos and people that go there, I don't fault them. I'm not trying to put casinos out of business. But what skill games are is something entirely different, and it's a different attitude, a different mindset for the people that play skill games.
Under your bill, which state government department or entity would have regulation and oversight over these skill games?
Under my bill, it would be the Department of Revenue, which also has lottery. So, we've heard this. The Gaming Control Board is what they control gambling, and say, well, that's not true. The Gaming Control Board was set up for one purpose, and that was for casinos. And just recently, I give the Pennsylvania Supreme Court kind of slapped the Gaming Control Board, because the Gaming Control Board was saying, if you have been associated with skill games on your property, you can't get a license for a legitimate, like a VGT terminal or something like that. And the Supreme Court just basically said, wait a minute, there's not, skill games are not illegal, so you can't do that. So that's one reason why I favor the Department of Revenue. The Gaming Control Board has been not a friend of skill games, and they have been, there's lawsuits out there, there's been newspaper articles about the improper relationship between the Gaming Control Board and the casino industry, and it's something I don't want to get involved in. I don't think skill games should be involved in it either. So we just thought the Department of Revenue is the better place to do this. They do a pretty good job with the lottery. So I think that they have the wherewithal. I trust them to do it.
Where is the bill in the legislative process currently?
In the process right now, it's being developed. We probably will introduce it. We were making some final tweaks on it actually this week.
Also in his budget proposal, Governor Shapiro revealed his Lightning Energy Plan, and you are the chair of the Senate Environmental Resources and Energy Committee. What aspects of that plan stood out to you?
The fact that it doesn't address the real issue. And the real issue in Pennsylvania that we need to address, and this came from, PJM has said this also, is we need to build capacity, and we are not addressing capacity, the infrastructure that we need to do. Some of the things that are going on, and I think it's unfortunate where we are, to some extent, we are so far down this slippery slope that I'm not sure that Pennsylvania is going to be able to survive without some significant hardships. We should be building capacity right now, and what's happening is we're retiring base load. It's called dispatchable power. It's the type of power that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. It doesn't matter what the weather is, doesn't matter whether the sun's shining or whatever. We have retired a lot of that base load capacity, dispatchable power in Pennsylvania. We have not replaced it with similar power. And it's going to come home to bite us, and that's where we are right now. Demand keeps growing. The demand with AI and data centers is grown more than anybody could ever anticipate it, even 2 years ago. We're going to run out of power. Some of the projections right now Years ago, the projection was, well, we needed to be doing something by 2030, 2032, something in that price range, or in that range. And then it dropped back to, well, maybe 2028. And the last numbers I had seen from PJM is we could face problems by as early as 26, 27. That's next year. That's the scary part. Here's the other scary part. Okay, there's been some things that PJM has done some things, and they've just got some new applications for things that are going on. And they've had some applications that say, okay, we're not going to build new. What we want to do is expand what we already have. That's great. And we're not going to close prematurely some of these base load power plants. It's great that they're doing that. The real problem is this. The equipment needed to do that expansion, the wait list, I was told originally, was 2 to 3 years to get the equipment. Earlier this week, I was told that wait list could be as long as 7 years. Okay, so we're saying that, well, that's great. We're going to expand this plant. Okay, well, 7 years to get the equipment, and they're saying that we face a problem as early as next year or 2028. The numbers no longer work, and that's my concern. And it's something that we've worked on, and I keep saying that we need to be building now, but unfortunately the wait list is out there. I talked to one of the major distributors yesterday, and and they concurred. If you don't have an order in for equipment, then you're probably not going to be able to get it. You're going to have a long wait.
Lastly, also on the topic of energy, you've recently reintroduced a bill about options for Pennsylvania residents' fuel availability. What does that bill say?
The fuel energy choice? Mm-hmm. We just mean, I got that idea actually from watching television, and I saw what was going on in San Francisco, where they had tried to eliminate any gas hookups for natural gas. And I thought, well, that really doesn't fit with Pennsylvania being one of the second largest natural gas producer in the country, one of the largest in the world. And we talked about it and said, look, I don't want to favor any particular energy. I am a big person of diversity is a key. But the person, whoever it is, whether it's a homeowner or a developer or whatever, should have the choice. If you want to use natural gas, fine. You want to use all electricity, fine. You want to use propane or something else, geothermal, fine. You pick. The government shouldn't pick for you.
Why did you feel like now was the time to reintroduce this bill?
Oh, I think that because we had introduced it before and we had actually gotten pushback from people that said, oh no, we want to regulate this. And I'm thinking from a statewide perspective, I have 168 municipalities in my Senate district. If every one of them is different, how do you have any kind of a system or a distribution system? So I just thought, what we need to do is the state needs to dictate what the rules are in this part of the game.
And where is that bill in the legislative process right now?
It's just been introduced, that's all.
Senator Gene Yaw, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.